Now, as the 2023 elections draws closer with barely 7 days to D-Day, the Nigerian government is putting appropriate security architecture in place ahead of the polls. Africa's most populous country is going to elect a new president for the first time in nearly 8 years, with a lot at stake. The current election also comes with a headache of a monetary crisis that has led to protests and the destruction of properties in the southern part of the country. Also posing a threat to successful polls is the Eastern Security Network in the southeast and the destruction of security structures and election materials. The next 7 days hold a lot for Nigerians and will determine where the country is headed. Indeed, these are desperate times and may call for desperate measures. Nigeria has a people to protect and an election to conduct, and how well will it deliver on its promise of a free, fair and credible election? Now, joining me tonight in PHQ to make sense of all of this, I have Ambassador Oamien Okhidievbie, is the Director, Media Coalition of Concerned Military Veterans. Good to have you here in the studio, Ambassador.
Thank you. Thank you very
much. Now, let's start with this. Now, INEC, the Independent National Electoral Commission, said there were 50 attacks in regional offices and other facilities since 2019. Armed conflict location event data indicates that this is a gross underestimate, with a minimum being 134 attacks. What's your assessment of the security situation in Nigeria as we inch towards the D-Day?
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. You know, we have been talking about all this electoral violence, possible occurrences, and the implications. You know, but it's unfortunate that the key triangles that would have toned down so many things have been left away. You know, I can see the possibilities of more violence, okay? But we are looking at the intervention of the security agencies. We are looking at how possible for the security agencies to apprehend persons, present them before the judiciary, and make sure they go through the criminal justice system. Swiftly, you know, that's the deterrence method that you can use. So we have not seen any of that, and we're still watching.
Now, Nigeria has a few off-cycle staggered elections, Anambra, Osun, Ekiti, to name a few. And during those elections, we see a massive deployment of security operatives that are deployed to, you know, keep the peace. But we won't have the luxury of doing that, and we don't have an infinite number of security operatives. So how effectively can the security agencies manage an election that will involve the entire federation?
Most of the things we have been advising is for them to be proactive, okay, because we have seen a lot of reactive measures being put in place when there is an incident, you know, and when you do show of force, you should be sure that the persons that are perpetrators, perceived perpetrators that you are trying to curtail, you know, you can go ahead of them. How do you become proactive? You know, we need detectives, you know, to go into the communities right now. Start pulling them out before they coerce, before they gather, before they act. You know, so if you do that, just like NDLA is doing most times, you know, you begin to remove them from their hideouts, from their planning centers, and you break down the cells. That's a very good measure that will help us.
Now, talking about the last elections in 2015 and 2019, Nigeria was only dealing with the problems of Boko Haram. Now we have multi-pronged security challenges. There's the Eastern Security Network, like I mentioned in the introduction, and of course, there's also ISWAP. So how best should security operatives deal with this threat? And where do you think some of these flashpoints might be? Because you said you're quite concerned that, you know, there might be incidents of violence. So what are where do you think are the flashpoints?
Well, we already know the flashpoints, you know. We already see what's happening in the East, in some places in the East. We already see attacks on INEC facilities. We see attacks on police offices, police stations. We see attacks on politicians themselves, So we already have a triangle of the flashpoints. What is the challenge is that the INEC has not positioned a team within that will be able to interface with the agencies and speak to them according to how we know how professionalism should be deployed. So if they had that, they will have people within the INEC that are interfacing with the agencies. Not every time you hear of the head of INEC speaking with the agencies, that's wrong. If you had that, you'll be able to put them in check.
A more collaborative effort. Yes.
Yeah.
Now, civil society groups such as Enough is Enough, Situation Room, Yaga Africa have played a crucial role in spreading messages to deter electoral violence. Elections are a civic exercise. Everybody goes out there to exercise their franchise and, vote according to your conviction. What is it about Nigeria and most African countries and democracy that elections seem to be a do-or-die affair, and as we lead up to elections, there's tension in the air? What is unique to us that gives us this fear? Because in other countries, they go about their business. There's no public holiday. You just go vote and get on with it.
Yeah, we had a lot of time for military regime, and in the times of military regimes, a lot of civilians were locked up, were this Nadeco and all of that. So when the democracy came on set, this attitude of military incursion, takeover, the brutality has transferred to the civilians, and they went ahead to make friends with the military. You see a lot of retired generals are given opportunities to have choice positions. Commanders, we have started to get lagis from all these politicians. So when they built that, they weaponized violence to intimidate their opponents. And in the course of that, they started to grow perpetrators. Perpetrators groups came from a lot. You have political stooges, that hope to get something again tomorrow. You have cultism, all the cult groups in the universities, the polytechnics, they are outgrown members that are politicians also call them in to become perpetrators. We have the unions, the transport unions, all of those kind of area unions, they are being weaponized to cause violence.
Sometimes some of this violence is not actually sporadic. There's a method to it, and it's organized. Is that what you're saying?
It's organized. It's a weapon. For you to be able to intimidate another party, you must create fear. Every politician in Nigeria for the last 30 years is respected in the strength of the mayhem and violence he can cause, not the articulate ability to produce and deliver results.
When do we start shedding some of this hangover from the military regime and, it's called a civilian government, and, be less violence and be less, have less propensity to violence? What will it take? It's our 24th year of uninterrupted democratic experience. It's quite a long time.
All the uninterrupted democratic experience, we still have ex-military personnel having some positions. Even the Senate president's seat have been held by military personnel. We have the Ministry of Defense held by retired military personnel. These are people that have served in a regime that they didn't have this current dynamics of technology, criminality, international crime, terrorism. The President Muhammadu Buhari, when he was a military man,
the challenges.
He didn't have this, the technology. The current Minister of Defense, as a military general, when he left office, most of the things in interplay now were not in existence then. So these are people that cannot produce the kind of diatribe that we need to attack all the incidences of vulnerability. So if we have this, we're going to continue in the same problem. We must look at putting round pegs in the round holes. People must serve in offices without being a general, but to deliver. The agencies must respect your intelligence, your professionalism, and your capacity and capability to deliver and work with you.
Now, Ambassador Roy, the recent visa bans announced by the U.S. on Nigerians involved in undermining the country's elections have been welcomed by many, but some have raised concerns about the possibility of unintended consequences, such as restricting the ability of genuine electoral actors to participate in international forums. How can these concerns be addressed while ensuring that the visa bans achieve the intended purposes of deterring electoral violence and malpractice? How strong is it if you say, oh, you can't come to the United States?
Well, we all know what happens when Nigerians travel out. Okay, I travel a lot. You know, I'm a member of the U.S. Commercial Department with my company, and I have my valid visa and I go out for business. Now, if you are restricted from traveling because of your electoral politics and that are going against the humanity of man, you know, so all of those things supposed to serve as a deterrence. They are only doing their own part in the guise of curtailing our inducement by any form of financial gratification. So if the US is doing that and the UK is doing that, it's just like what is happening in Russia and Ukraine. So there are sanctions that will come from international bodies to show their interest and collaboration with the citizenry.
But does it go far? Does the message translate to those on the ground, the foot soldiers?
It does, because you don't know that the Japa syndrome is in a hype. You know, so nobody wants to get flagged that you are involved in electoral malpractice, so don't get close to any visa center. But people don't get the information, and people are induced. That's why I talked about stooges. Once I'm a stooge to a system that is trying to inculcate this violence in the society, and they use me. I have a promise for tomorrow. So because of that, I may overlook the US visa ban and still go ahead. But it's also a home calling for everyone to be careful.
Now, still talking about the United States, the presence of the former Assistant U.S. Secretary of State for African Affairs, Johnny Carson, he's leading the election observation mission in Nigeria this month, and it signals the importance of the upcoming elections and the international community's commitment to credible electoral process. What benchmarks will observation missions use to evaluate the credibility of the elections, and why is it important to have other observers? It's a Nigerian exercise. Nigeria can exercise its sovereignty. Why is it important to have international observer missions? There's African Union, there's EU, and now the United States mission, observe our electoral process.
You know, we have the International Human Rights Association, we have the International Red Cross, we have the UN, we have the ECOWAS, we have the AU, you know, and all of these have a role to play. Nigerians have been called to other countries to go for electoral monitoring. But my concern is this. When these foreign observers come to Nigeria, all they observe, all they see, all they write about, all they kick against, it doesn't hold any water. You know, after the election, those perceived to have manipulated negatively, they are still in power.
Do they give feedback back to the government?
They do. They give feedback. It comes on air every time. You know, the reports are read, you know, but it still lies on the court, our Supreme Court, to say XYZ person cannot sit in that office. You know, and if the Supreme Court is compromised, then there's always an internal problem.
Absolutely. Now, Ambassador Roy, electoral violence is a complex and multifaceted problem requiring a wide range of solutions that go beyond those deterrence and punishment. What are some of the long-term measures that can be put in place to address the root causes of electoral violence, such as poverty, lack of education, employment opportunities, and political marginalization?
Well, if we look at removing the embers in the flame, you know, that is a very key aspect. Like this week that you see, a lot of commando-style arrests will just be going on. Not against any political party, but sincerely with actionable intelligence to show that persons are hibernating with weapons, you know, and make sure they face judicial processes. Another thing is like your name. Like in those days, if you commit a crime and you are caught and prosecuted, you know, the name of that family becomes a dilemma. You know, abroad too, if a name has been stained, you need to be explaining a lot of things. You know, so we need to capture the family names of people that are involved in electoral violence. We need to capture it. We need to ensure that before they assess some basic things, they are queried. You know, like loan, like opportunity to buy your own land. You know, if the government puts in a law like that, who will put the law? Same politicians that are in National Assembly and the Senate. But if it is done, I will know that I cannot buy a landed property once my name is stained with electoral violence.
Where do we begin this education from?
You mentioned some people that agencies that have been talking to people.
Yes.
You see viral videos captioned like a cartoon trying to educate people not to be violent. Some short skits are done too, where families come to, a man is calling some young men to go and commit a mayhem, and they are telling him, bring your children. Where have you seen the part of the National Orientation Agency? You see, the National Orientation Agency has gone comatose in all of these things. It should have employed all these bloggers that you see. That's what foreign countries do. When you see people that do cybercrime, they bring them in to become ethical hackers. You know, so why does the National Orientation Agency cannot get in these bloggers? Yeah, should be.
Now, Ambassador Roy, every election cycle, we have something called the Peace Accord. I think General Abdulsalam Abubakar is part of the committee, Bishop Matikuka, and other prominent Nigerians. They bring the front runners of the presidential candidate to sign a peace accord saying, you know, our conduct, we would always promote peace before, during, and after elections. How important is this peace accord, and how far does it really go to serve as a deterrent against post-election violence?
So far, we have seen that it's an exercise in futility. You know, if my members get involved in electoral violence, and the peace accord indicates that I will lose 1,000 votes, you know, with proper evidence, I will lose 1,000 votes, and if depending on the gravity of the violence, I will begin to look at curtailing my members, you know, because I know what the result will be, you know, but there are no lines of demand on the peace accord. It's just an exercise of futility. They come out, they are paid extra codes to come out and do all of that. They say they are elders in the country. It does not work.
So even, I was going to ask you that, should we also make governorship, because the only time there's violence is not necessarily for the presidential elections. I was going to ask if it should be brought down to the level of, you know, state governorship elections and National Assembly. But you seem to belong to the school of thought that thinks it's just mere signing of papers and an exercise in futility.
The whole caucus of perpetrators starts from the homegrown. It starts from the local government councillors, the local government chairmen, the governorship elections. That is where they build the gravity of the violence, you know, the perpetrators. So when you come to national elections, it is still those catchments of boys that have been positioned in different places that are activated.
You're very right about that. Now, Ambassador Roy, just a few weeks ago when the opposition Labour Party held its presidential campaign in Lagos, there were reports of a number of their supporters attacked, their vehicles were destroyed. You know, does that, what do you make of that incident? And number two, does that make you apprehensive of things that might come up in these elections?
There's no apprehension. Like, I'm sure tomorrow we have another political party that is also coming out for a mega rally. You know, definitely you must see all these pockets of attacks, pockets of violence, because people are not controlled by the center. You know, just remember the bandits and the terrorism that we had. You know, they said it on national TV that they came to the bush to give us uniforms, guns, and everything. But now you cannot control them. You know, so when you push people into violence, yes, you created a monster that has no leash. You know, so definitely when there is any rally, you must see some people that have stepped out of place and they will be attacked. Especially when you wear emblems, you wear face caps.
You identify yourself. But it shouldn't be like that. It says, I mean, you should respect people's choices.
That will take us back to where we said people that are perpetrators, what are the consequences? You know, so there are viral videos. Why have the police not gone there to arrest those people and take them to a quick judicial process?
And it will definitely serve as a deterrent. Yes. Now, there are widespread tensions that suggest that election violence could break out in many parts of the country. What states would you consider flashpoint states, and what should be done to avert violent incidents?
Okay, for that, I want to say this.
Looking at the current
yes, I want to say this. I want to say this.
Setup.
You see, we like to hear security intelligence reports from the UK, from the US, right? But in Nigeria here, domiciled in Nigeria, we have Eon's intelligence. We have Bulwark intelligence. We have this one by Kabiru Mohammed. You know, so all of those intelligence bodies are dishing out monthly, weekly, hourly, seconds security reports. So
we pay attention to UK travel advisory, US.
Those are the ones we pay attention for, but the domicile, the local ones, have localized professional instincts that will be able to deliver to you what the American reports cannot deliver to you. You know, so even the American reports, they pick some things from those local reports. So people should go Google online. You see Eon's intelligence, Bulwark, and
I mean, even Nigerian media practitioners, all it's a responsibility to also report from these platforms and not always think that, you know, when things come from a Western view, it makes it better.
Sure,
it's not
sure.
like that all the time. Now, Ambassador Roy, before we wrap things up, the largest, most youthful electorate in the history of Nigeria will head to the polls this Saturday to decide in the high-stake presidential and parliamentary elections. Why is it important to have a violent-free electioneering process? Okay,
I like your question, but I want to take it like this. Why is it that I believe that we'll have our elections? Because so many people have been asking me, is the election going to hold? You see, Nigeria has Nigerians that are already stakeholders in the oil blocks. These are stakeholders that come from different tribes, different religions, different parts of the country, ethnicity. So they are the ones actually deciding the extent and the extreme angles that our violence can go to. Dangote is in Lagos. He's running his own business here in Lagos, trying to launch what is not done even in some African countries. Now, don't you know that there are so many other Nigerians from other tribes that have chunks of participation
in different parts?
Yes. In all these oil wells that have been going around, there are Nigerians with chunk of interest. So these are the people discussing. Until we leave that prerogative and we have all the resources under the country, before I'll start to fear. But right now, those are the people that we say the violence is okay. And everybody will just go back to their home because every other person is a puppet being manipulated by the manipulators.
Now, a quick one before we wrap this conversation up. At what point would you say, you know, we've crossed the Rubicon and we've had a violent-free elections? Because violence there's pre-election violence, there's violence can happen during the elections and post-elections. Which is the most tricky period? And when should security agencies
that's what I want to say. When violence can deter voters from coming out to vote, you will say violence has scored points. When violence will influence the report, like the times of ballot box snatching, you say violence has scored points. You know, when violence would also affect the effectiveness of the agencies and the INEC staff, those are the 3-4 areas that are used to calculate the interest and the implications of violence. But so far for this election, I'm going to tell you for free, violence cannot fully influence the outcome of this election. It's not only for the beavers. It's just that I see a lot of readiness within the agencies. I have a lot of friends in the agencies, even in the military. The body language is saying that we want a free and fair election. Everybody's candidates should have their votes, and we should count the votes and put in the leader.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Roy Okhidievbie. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure.
And good luck with the elections.
Thank you.